Daf Tesvav, the sixth midah of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, according to the version of Micha. And this midah is called Ki Chofetz Chesed Hu. He is a God who desires Chesed, a God who finds favor in Chesed. So the Talmud Devorah says, Kfar pirashnu b'mekoymai. We've already explained in greater detail in its place. He's referring to, as it says here as the note, what the Ramak wrote in Pardes Rimonim, Shara Checholos, Sof Perakei. We mentioned that the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero wrote many different Sforim in Kabbalah. One of the, probably the most well-known and common one is Pardes Rimonim, which is a large volume. There in Shari Cholos of Perkei, he describes the following: Sheyesh beheichal yedua. There is a particular chamber which is known for the fact that malachim memunim lekabel gemulus chasadim shadam oisei ba'olam hazeh. So there's a particular chamber or sphere or realm in the heavens where there's a specific class of angels whose whole purpose is to receive the chasadim that are done below. Jews, non-Jews, even, but specifically Jews who do the mitzvos of Gimos Chasadim, these Chasadim are passed on, they go up to, are passed into the hands of this particular class of angels, these Malachim. And when the attribute of divine judgment, or the attribute of judgment, speaks badly against Israel, immediately these angels who are responsible for receiving becomes a place where there's a receptacle for the mitzvos, the ma'asim tovim, specifically the gimos chasadim, the acts of chesed that Jews do. Immediately these angels present, as it were, to Kadosh Baruch Hu a record of these good deeds, this gimos chasadim, u'marachem al Yisrael. And God has mercy on the Jewish people. Why is this? Bipnei she'u chofetz bechesed. Because he is chofetz bechesed. He desires chesed. Chesed finds favor in God's eyes. So, ki kel chofetz chesed ato, ki chofetz chesed hu, is referring to the fact that God desires chesed. And when Klal Yisrael, Chas v'Shalom, is in a difficult spiritual state, because of the Averos, and the Midas Adin is held over the world, so there's this specific Eichal, this area in heaven where you have these angels, these Malachim, who are responsible for gathering and collecting the Ma'asim Tovim of Gemil Sadim of Klal Yisrael.
Is there a Midas Adin now of Klal Yisrael?
There's a Midas Adin all of the time, in potential, and there are specific times where the Midas Adin is expressed more than others. The purpose of this Heichal, ki chofetz chesedu, is that when this force of din, which is being outstretched and even threatened to be implemented on the world and on Klal Yisrael, so these Malachim come and present the Ma'asim Tovim, and it stays the din. And we know that if we were talking about putting things in the context of the Sfiros and the Midos and the Olamos, which we've been talking about, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, in the realm of Yetzira, you have the 10 Sefirot, the primal 10 Sefirot, which is Keser, Chochma, Bina, and Das. And then after that, you've got Chesed and Devorah. Chesed to the right, Devorah to the left. When Klal Yisrael is acting in a way which is one of Chesed, so that has an effect on the midah of chesed in the Sfiros, which bring down the divine energy from Atzilus and Bria through Yetzirah, the realm of the Sfiros, into the world of Asiya, towards the right, in the direction of Chesed. If Chas v'Shalom, Klal Yisrael is not acting in the way of Chesed, they're out of balance, they're not learning Torah, they're not doing the mitzvahs, they're not doing Gemilas Chasadim. So the result is that the energy that flows down into the Sfiros is going to be directed towards the left, through the sphere of Devorah, and then down into Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, and Malchus, so that the influence of Devorah, of Din, is what's brought down into the world. What's happening here is that even if there's a Hanhaga of Devorah, even though Midas of Din is coming down through the Spheros, aligned to the left, through the sphere of Devorah, nevertheless, that flow can be deflected because of the Maaseh Chesed of Klal Yisrael had done in the past. And the Malachim are involved in doing this. And the sources talk about how the Malachim themselves are actually associated with the Spheros. So that, for example, the Malach of Din is Gavriel. And Gavriel is related to the word to the word Gvura, corresponding to the sphere of Gvura, which is judgment. And the opposite is the angel of Chesed, Chazdiel. There's a Malach called Chazdikel, yeah, because this Malach gets its power, its energy from the sphere of Chesed. And many of the different Malachim get their koyach from a sphera, which comes from above. So the sphere imparts that energy to the Malach, and the Malach is that pocket of energy that directs that influence down into the world of Asiya, from the spheros. So that the world of Yetzirah is also the world of the Malachim. It's that Vav, and the Yud, K, and the Vav, K that we're speaking about, that Vav, that conduit, that channel through which the divine energy is projected into the world of Asiya, comes down through the Spheros, and beneath that, through the Malachim. And from then, into the celestial bodies, in the form of the Mazel. And the Mazel then conveys that energy down onto earth. Right? So that you have the divine will going through the Spheros, from the Spheros to the Malachim associated with that Sphera, and then from the Malachim into the heavenly bodies, so that the Malachim are described as being the neshamos of those bodies. The Malachim are the neshamos of those bodies, and those bodies then radiate the influence of their neshama, that is the directives, the divine directives being passed down through the Malachim onto the world. So this energy flows down through the Spheros in a way which is directed either to the right of Chesed or to the left of Din. And like I said, the Gemilas Chasadim of Klal Yisrael can be used in order to deflect Din to the right, so that the influence comes down in the form of Chesed. U'merachem alehem k'mo shaya mipnei shu chofetz Chesed. V'miyos shehem chayavim, if in fact they are found to be liable, chayavim, imem goimlim chesed zeh lezeh. But if it's a scenario where the Jews, or people in general, are actually doing acts of chesed one to the other, merachem alehem, God will have mercy on them, even if they're Baalei Avera. Even if they're Baalei Avera, even if they're Rishoyim, even if they transgress. But just by virtue of the fact that they chesed one to the other will be enough to deflect the din from them to chesed. Ukmo shaya bezman ha'churban. And this we find, in fact, is something that took place during the actual Churban. Shenemar, as it says, LeGavriel, to the Malach Gavriel, Boel Benos the Galgal, go between the Galgal. What's Galgal? The Galgal is referring to, this comes from the Nevuah of Yechezkel and the Maaseh Merkava, where Yechezkel is describing in very enigmatic, what's the word I'm looking for? Metaphorical terms, the hierarchy of the spiritual realm. It's different parts, different levels and different parts. That's the Maaseh Merkava. And part of this involves describing things which are called the Galgalim, which are translated sometimes as wheels, but that doesn't really mean very much. It's referring to the Spheros. We'll look up the psukim soon. But what the author is getting at is that even during the time of Averos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will recall these good deeds and be mate klape chesed, direct things towards chesed rather than din. And we find this even during the time of the Churban, when, for example, the Malach Gavriel was told, Bol benois legalgal, go between the galgal, go between the different spheros in the apparatus. El tachas the kruv, beneath the part of the Maseh Merkava, which is where there is a kruv, an angel. Umole chofenecho gechole esh, and fill your hands with a fistful or a palm full of fire. Mebenos the kruvim, from between these angels. Uzroi kaleir, and throw these fiery coals, these fiery embers, on the city, on Jerusalem, etc. So in general, we're going to go into this more detail shortly, but in general, what's happening here is a reference to Hashem's telling Gavriel to send the Midas Adin against Yerushalayim. Kihu Saradin, because he, Gavriel, he is the minister of judgment, V'agvura, V'nitan lo reshus, and there was given to him permission, Lekabel koichoy sedin, to receive the power of din, judgment, Benos the Galgal, from between the Galgal, Mitachas the Keruvim, underneath the Keruvim, these angels, Me'esha Mizbeach, from the fire of the altar. What is this? Dainu din gvuras malchus, the judgment from the strengths of malchus. This is referring to what I was saying before about how the spheros in the realm of Yetzirah, the spheros in the realm of Yetzirah, receive on the upper end the divine directive, and then are translated down into the lower spheros in terms of midos and hanhaga, the way Kadosh Baruch Hu interacts with the bria in the world of Asiyah. So that if the hashpah, the shefa, the influence that's coming down from the higher realm is one of din, God forbid, the energy will be directed towards gvura. And that's what it's referring to here. That the directives that are being sent down through the spheros are being expressed in the midos through the left side of Gvura into Malchus, where Malchus is the final sphera, which then passes down the influence of the spheros into the world of, or the realm of Asiyah. So he's saying that the angel of Gavriel was given over the power of fire, the destructive power, which refers to din, in order to direct that energy down through the spheros and become towards the left, and be concentrated bedin gvura malchus, in a way where malchus itself is expressing din and gvura into the world. V'haya din mischazek ad shebikesh l'kolos is a kol, and this energy of destructive judgment was increasing until it could have destroyed everything. L'ka'kea beitzosan shel Yisrael, to break the shell of Israel, because they were deserving of destruction, because of everything that was happening towards the end of Bais Rishon, the first temple, where the Jewish people were enmeshed in the three cardinal transgressions of Gilui Arayos, of Arazara, and Shfichus Damim. And because of this, it was decreed upon them destruction, and we know that that ultimately happened. But there was a buildup of din that was flowing down into the world through Malchus. Uksiv Sham, and it says there in this continuation of the verses, V'geira l'keruvim tovnis yad adam, there was made to be seen for the keruvim the image of the hand of a person, tachas kanfehem, underneath their wings. What is this referring to? Hainu Shamar HaKadosh Baruch Hu the Gavriel. That's a reference to what God later said to Gavriel. Hem gomlim chasadim elu imelu. These Jews are doing good deeds one to the other, even though they are full of transgression. but still they also do chesed, one with the other. And even if they are liable for their transgressions, they were saved and spared because of the good deeds that were pointed out to them. The good deeds that were recalled for Klal Yisrael. The reason why this helped to save them is because of this midah. Ki chofetz chesed hu, because he is a God who desires chesed. God finds favor in chesed. Even when Jews are transgressing and they deserve divine punishment, even on the most massive scale, God says if they're good with one another, that can deflect the din. What this means is, B'mash Yisrael goyim chesed, that which Jews do good one with the other, v'osod maskir lehem, and that good side is recalled for them, even though they're not considered to be worthy on the other aspect, insofar as they're transgressors. Still, the chesed is recalled, and that's what he means here. Ki chofetz chesed hu, God desires chesed. Since God loves chesed, He's willing to suspend the din because of the good deeds that people do one for the other. Okay, let's look into a little more details in the verses. What the author here is referring to. It's in Yechezkel chapter 10. The truth is, even before chapter 10, there's a description in chapter 8 and chapter 9. Kadosh Baruch Hu is pointing out to Yechezkel all of the sins and the transgressions of Klal Yisrael at the time. And he says, for example, it happened in the 6th year, this is from chapter 8. In the 6th month, on the 5th of the month, I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, and the hand of the Lord fell upon me there. And I saw, and behold, there was a likeness like the appearance of fire. This is the beginning of the stirring up of din. From the appearance of his loins, and downward there was fire. From his loins and upwards was like the appearance of a radiance, like the color of the chashmal. Energy coming on from on high, but being manifested as it goes down to the left. Fire, din. Then he stretched forth in the form of a radiance like the color of the chashmal, so forth and so on. And he says, Son of man, lift your eyes. So I lifted my eyes. This image of provocation was in the entryway. And he said, Son of man, do you see what they do? Great abominations are the people of the house of Israel committing here, to cause me to distance myself from my sanctuary. And now you will again see great abominations. And the verses go on and continue to show different aspects of the abominations of the transgression of Israel, growing greater and greater as he progresses. I think that's what the text here is referring to, how over time the din was growing and growing and growing. He said, for example, and now will you get again see great abominations. And he brought me to the entrance of the courtyard, and I saw that, behold, there was a single hole in the wall. And he said to me, tunnel through the wall. So I tunneled through the wall, and there was an entrance, and he said, enter, and the evil abominations that they commit here, even to the Holy of Holies. So I entered, and I saw every sort of image, disgusting, creeping things and animals, and all the idols of the house of Israel were carved upon the wall around and printed on the base of Mikdash. And 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel were standing there, each man with a censer in his hand, with a thick cloud of incense rising, so forth and so on. Many, very, very difficult things. Women calling out to Avodah Zarah. Now you will see yet even greater abominations than these. And he brought me to an inner courtyard of the temple of Hashem, and behold, at the entrance of the temple, between the entrance wall and the altar, there were some 25 men with their backs to the sanctuary of Hashem. They were standing in the east, and they had their backs facing the temple, which was in the west, and their faces were facing towards the east, and they were bowing eastward to the sun. So in the house of the temple of Hashem, they turned their back on the Beis HaMikdash, on the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and they were facing the rising sun in the east and praying to the sun instead of Hashem. Do you see, Son of Man, were there other sins too trivial for the house of Judah that they had to commit the abominations that they have committed here in the temple, in the Holy of Holies? For they have filled the land with injustice, and yet they return to anger me. in my own house. For here they are sending their foul odor into their nose. I too will react with wrath. I will not spare, and have compassion. I won't have compassion. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not hearken to them. The meat of din was so great that Hashem says, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to listen to I'm going to destroy the city. I'm not going to listen to their cries. That was chapter 8. Chapter 9, he sees a vision of the pending destruction. Bring near those appointed over the city to destroy it, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand. And behold, 6 men were coming from the direction of the upper gate that faces northward, each man with his sledgehammer in his hand. But one man among them was clothed in linen with a scribe's slate at his loins. He was going to record everything that took place. They came and stood by the copper altar. Then the glory of God of Israel ascended from atop the cheruv, which had been going to the threshold of the temple, and he called the man clothed in linen on whose loins was the scribe's slate. And Hashem said to him, pass through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and mark a sign on the foreheads of the men who sigh and moan for all the abominations that are done within. Before the destruction, he sends an angel through the inhabitants of Jerusalem, telling this angel to mark the foreheads of those who abhor the abominations. And later, when God sends the angels of destruction through the city, he instructs them to fell every person aside from those who have the mark of Hashem, saving them from the destruction. It's not that this actually took place yet. It's a prophecy about what will take place, and so forth and so on. That brings us up now to our section that the author here quotes on, chapter 10. Then I saw that, behold, on top of the expanse that was above the heads of the cherubim, these angels, something like a sapphire stone. Sapphire stone, yes? That's referring to the Sefirot. Like the appearance of the likeness of a throne could be seen over them, over the angels. Remember I was discussing before? How the angels get their koyach from the Sephiros. So here, right, would appear to be like sapphire stones, these points of light and emanation, a system above which the angels are located, is referring to the realm of the Sephiros. Then he said to the man clothed in linen, that's God, to this angel, come between the galgal, that's what our text quotes here, this verse, come between the galgal beneath the cheruv, and fill your cupped hands with fire coals from among the cheruvim, and throw them upon the city. So this is a reference to, as the author describes, Hashem calling to the Malach Gavriel and saying, go between the Galgolim, meaning go between these spherical emanations of power, the realm of the throne above the angels, and fill your cup with fire coals. That's talking about din, judgment. Direct the energy going down through the spheros towards the left, towards the midah of din. And then throw them upon the city so that the expression of din should be brought down into the world. The cheruvim were standing to the right of the temple when the man came in, and a cloud filled the inner courtyard. Then the glory of Hashem rose up from above the cherub and rested upon the threshold of the temple, and the temple was filled with the cloud, and the courtyard was filled with the glow of the glory of Hashem. And the sound of the wings of the cheruvim was heard up to the outer courtyard like the voice of Kel Shaddai when he speaks. And it happened when he commanded the man clothed in linen, that's Gavriel, take fire from between the Galgal, from between the cheruvim, that he came and stood near the Ofan. The Gavriel came and he introduced this midah of din. The cheruv stretched out his hand from between the cheruvim to the fire that was between the cheruvim, and he carried it and put it into the cupped hands of the one clothed in linen. Then he took it, went out. Okay? So that the midah of din was being executed. Right? because the Cherub stretched out his hand from between the Keruvim to the fire that was between the Keruvim in order to get the meat of din, and he carried it, the meat of din, and he put it into the cupped hands, referring to the Malchus of the one clothed in linen, where Gavriel was passing this din on to Malchus. That's the reference here in the text, where it says, Dainu din Gevuras HaMalchus. And then it says, there could be seen on the cheruvim the form of a human hand under their wings. Here, this form of the human hand is a reference to what he started off in the chapter saying, that there is a heichal where the maisim tovim, the gemilas chasadim of the Jewish people are stored. Yes? And that can deflect the midas of din during a time of judgment. And that's the reference here, that the Malach Gavriel was sent to stir up these fires of din, passing them down into Malchus, and then just before the Malchus had been executed, the din had been executed through Malchus, he saw a hand stretched forth, and that hand is referring to the hand that was holding the repository for all of the Maisim Tovim of Klal Yisrael. And the Malach Gavriel was stayed for 6 years. The din was suspended in order to give people the opportunity to do tshuva. And it was in the merit of the good deeds that they had done one with the other. That's his hand that's being referred to here. There could be seen the cheruvim in the form of a human hand under their wings. So this human hand, which is referenced with the hand, of course, is a reference to doing. This human hand is referring to the doing of the good deeds that people did that stayed the din of Gavriel in order to prevent the Churban from taking place earlier. And in this way, the whole thing was suspended. And why was this, he says? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Chofetz Chesed Hu. He desires Chesed. He loves Chesed and is willing to allow the good deeds that people do to intervene on their behalf, even when they deserve punishment and destruction. That's the point here. K'moshe Yisrael goim lim Chesed, just like the Jewish people do Chesed one with the other, even if they don't deserve it. Do Chesed with them. V'oso tzad maskir lehem. That good side is recalled for them, even if they don't deserve it from another point of view, which is that of their transgressions. It's a very deep idea. Imken, b'midazo, page Yud Zayin. Imken, b'midazo, ro'oi la'adam nisnaheg. It's therefore befitting for people to act in this way, to emulate God as well. Even if he sees a person does him evilly and angers him, if there is in that person some element of good, some redeeming trait, some aspect of good, either shemetiv lacherim, he is good to other people, or some good act, good trait, good thing that he does. Either he's good to others, or maybe he does some mitzvah. Yeah. This should be enough, recalling this person's good deed to others, or recalling this person's good deeds in general to Hashem, should be enough to deflect from upon that person our hatred, our anger from him. And therefore a person's heart should be appeased towards such a person, because just like God, we should desire chesed. Yeah? So if there's somebody who in general is doing something wrong, or is a bad person, but there are some good redeeming factors about that person, either what he does to other people, or the mitzvahs that he does for Hashem, or the things that he does for us, that should be enough, because just like Hashem is chafetz chesed, we should be chafetz chesed, and that should be enough to appease our anger against that person, or appease our judgment against such a person, because in the end of the day, he does things which are good. And furthermore it says, Daili b'toiva zo sheyeshlo. It's enough for me, this good thing that he has. It's true, he might have fault A, B, and C, but in the end of the day, he does such and such a thing. He gives charity, or he davens, or he benefits me in some way. So the implication here is that we should be stirred to overlook other people's shortcomings, as right, in the virtue of their doing other things which are good. V'kol sheken b'ishto, and all the more so this is true regarding one's wife, for example. As the sages of blessed memory explained in the Masechet Yevamos. It's talking there, I believe, about Rabbi Chia, whose wife treated him very badly, with great disrespect. And anything that she did do, she did for herself. She didn't do for him. She treated him in a very nasty, ornery way. And people said, but nevertheless, the rabbi bought her gifts, bought her presents, did nice things for her. And people asked, how can you treat her that? She treats you like garbage. She treats you horribly. How can you do that? How can you just overlook the horrible ways in which she treats you? So he said to them, Dayenu shemegadloi says benenu metzilus usanu minechet. It's enough that our wives, in this case he's referring to his wife who treated him badly, nevertheless raises his children, and they prevent us from transgressing sexually. Because a person has a wife, of course, ideally, husband and wife should have a loving, nurturing, giving, sharing, mutual relationship. But if, God forbid, in the instance where that's not the case, here this rabbi was saying, I'm not going to take vengeance against the evil way, the nasty way she acts towards me, because she's got other redeeming factors, namely, she raises my children, she takes care of my other needs, she cooks and she cleans. In the end of the day, there must have been some intimacy between them, and that prevented him from transgressing in those areas in other ways. And therefore, and this is brought as an example to show how even if a person mistreats somebody, acts nasty and mean to somebody, but still there are some ways in which they benefit the person. From this story, it would seem to imply, even if it's not the person's intention to really do you any good, it's just secondary of nature. She's raising children for herself. But still, you're getting some benefit from that person, so we should try and make that enough to judge the person favorably, to overlook their shortcomings. Kach yomar al kol adam. This is how he should feel regarding every person as well. Daili betoiva ploinis she'osoli. It's enough for me, despite their shortcomings, it's enough for me, the good deed, the way in which, the good deed that this person did for me. O she'oso imploni, or that he did with somebody else, meaning if he doesn't do me any good at all, but he does good to others, so that should be enough to judge this person favorably. In the end of the day, he does some good things. Or some other good attribute that the person has. It's true, he might be a swindler. On the other hand, he's a humble person. For example, I'm just throwing out an example. Yeah, he's a humble person. In this way, we fill in this midah of being chafetz chesed, desiring chesed, valuing chesed, which means, in this case, not our doing chesed to others, but when we see other people who are falling short of the mark in so many different ways, but if they are good in some way, they have some redeeming qualities, characteristics, or actions, then we should judge them favorably and show mercy upon them. So this type of thing, it's quite common. You might have a relationship with someone in your family who, let's say, might not be the most sympathetic person. They might say things which are nasty or mean. They might even do things which are nasty and mean. But for whatever reason, even if it's not really with the intention of necessarily helping you, but they do something from which you benefit, so that would be grounds for showing, what's the word I'm looking for? Appreciation for the good things that they do. And we shouldn't, although it's quite natural to say, well, he says nasty things. He treats me in nasty ways. So just because I get some benefit from him in an indirect way, I should say thank you. I should show appreciation. 80% of the time, I have to suffer abuse from that person. 20% of the ways I get something good. And even there, it's really not intended. If he could avoid it, he probably wouldn't want me to get it. But still, I'm getting it. That should be grounds for showing appreciation for a person. Another example of this is, we're taught that when a person's a guest in someone's home, Chazal say, a person should say, he's sitting at the table with the head of the household and his wife and the children, he's invited to meal, sitting at the table, and he should think and say, how much effort this person has expended on my behalf. All of the food, and all of the drink, and all of the pleasantries, and a place to sit, and a roof over their head. Right? How much this person has done for me. I'm so appreciative of it. That's what a person should feel. Even though, in truth, he didn't cook the meal for the guest. The food wasn't cooked for the guest. It was cooked for the members of the household. And all the dainties that are there are not for the guest. They're really for the members of the household. And the roof over their head is not there for the guest. It's there for the members of the household. So in truth, they did very little for him. They really did very little for him. He's one guest among a house of 12 people. How much did they really do for him? Yet we're told that's not how you should look at it. Even though they did it because the family needs a roof over their head, and they need a place to eat, and they need food to eat, and the children have to be fed, and that was probably the majority of the intention that people had when they were putting this whole thing together. As far as he's concerned, he should be looking at it in a different light, which is how much they did for me, how much effort went into for me, right? And that's the type of thing that we're talking about here. If we benefit from people in different ways, right, we should express thanks for that. We should be desirous of, meaning we should make note of acts of chesed. I'll give you another example. You get on the bus, you sit down, you take your ride from point A to B, right? You get off the bus. Should you say thank you to the driver or not? Why should I say thank you to the driver? First of all, I paid for the ride. Secondly, sometimes the way the drivers drive, I'm lucky to be alive and be able to get off the bus. Yeah? He doesn't work for me. He works for somebody else. He doesn't care about me. I'm just another passenger in his way. Right? Another card to punch. So I should say thank you. He should say thank you to me for getting off the bus. He wants to get his job done. As soon as he takes everybody from their point A to their point B, he's finished. So I should say thank you to him? From here we say yes. From here we see that yes, you should say thank you to him. Why? Even though he's being paid by the bus company, and even though he doesn't care about your money from a hole in the wall, yeah, and even though you're in his way because you're just one more passenger that he has to clip and get and deal with, yeah, and schlep around and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, you got a tova from him. You got some tangible benefit. You got from point A to point B. Hakaras tov. Thank you. Even though he didn't do it for you. He didn't do it for you. He did it for himself. He wants to get paid. He needs a job. But at the end of the day, he helped you get from point A to point B. Thank you. Aside from the fact it's just nice to be a mensch. But right, that would be an example. I think that would be a common typical example of the type of thing that we're talking about. Yeah. You buy something. You buy something at a store. Yeah. You need a broom. Your wife's at home, she's all upset, the house is a mess, the broom's broken. So she's pushing you, go, get the broom already, go get the broom. So you're going to get the broom, right? You buy the broom, you give the guy the money, he gives you the broom. We would expect him to say thank you to me, to us. Yeah, why? Because I'm giving him money, he's earning money off me. That's what we expect, right? Service with a smile. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being my patron. I hope you come back. Bring your family, so on and so on. According to this, it's exactly the opposite. Well, not exactly the opposite, but the opposite is also true. You give the guy money, and he gives you the broom. Thank you. Why? because my wife is screaming back home. The house is a mess. She's pushing me out to get the broom. And now I'm able to get the broom, take it home, make her happy, and make the house clean. And if this guy was not there looking for my money, I wouldn't be able to find what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a broom. So he's done something for me. He's provided a service for me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have a broom. Oh, he's not doing it for me. He cares whether I have a broom or not. He just cares that he can use the broom to earn money. But still, I'm getting a tova from him. I'm getting a tangible benefit from the fact that he set up a business here to provide for the things that I need. My needs are being provided for through him. Thank you. Right? And the point here is that we should extend this line of thinking even further to examples where, not like the neutral examples I was talking about, but even when the person seems to be obnoxious or rude or nasty or biting in some way, harms me even in some way, but is nevertheless good in some other way, either to me or to others, it's still incumbent upon us to try and be like Hashem, which is Chefes Hesedu, be noteworthy take notice of the good things that this person does. Okay, in order to deflect the din towards Chesed, from the left to the right. Okay, let's stop here.